She's even got all of her parts highlighted in bold. Okay, so did you guys get negative 2.24? Which hits right here, which is in the rejection region. So I'm going to reject the null. I reject the null. And reject the claim, because they're the same thing, that the mean price is $20,500. Now, if I was on an AP test, I would say the mean price of a 2-year-old sedan in good condition, right? We'd say all the words, but in our homework we don't have to. Is this making sense to you guys?
Did we do the p-value, or is that after?
I haven't done the p-value yet. So now what I'm going to show you is that your calculator will do hypothesis testing for you, all of it, which is great, but sometimes they will ask a question. They'll be like, you do a hypothesis test and you get a t-score of negative 2.5. Do you accept or reject? And they won't even like tell you enough information that you could put it in your calculator, so they're just checking to see if you understand the process. Sometimes they ask process questions, sometimes they ask specific questions. So let me show you how to do it in your calculator. So you go to stat, and then over to tests. Here I got a z-test and a t-test. The ones we're going to be using for this chapter, the z-test was last section, t-test is this section, and then we'll also be using one proportion z-test on the bottom. And then you see all the 2 sample stuff. That will all be next chapter. Okay, so we're going to pick number 2, t-test. Now there are 2 choices that you can draw from. What do you think it means, the difference between data and stats?
Data, we use the data you answer in here.
Right, see how it says data, and it says that it's referring to L1?
Just a reminder to teachers that no seniors are getting out early to stretch and get ready for basketball. No seniors get out early.
This is rigged. I bet you all the teachers in this.
Class through period 9.
You could also stretch in here if you wanted to.
Well, I'm not playing.
Okay.
It's not that deep for me.
But it's rigged. Okay. Anyway, so data is when it's referring to a list in your calculator, and stats is when you already have the info. So we're going to hit stats here. The mu sub 0 is what your claim is. So we're going to type in 20,500. We're just going to do this exact same test we just did by hand. The x bar is 19,850. The S is 1,084. N was 14. If you look at the this one, it has not equals to, less than, or greater than. That's the alternative. So you have to highlight the alternative. In this case, it would be not equals to. Now you can either do 2 things. You can either say calculate, which will just give you numbers on your screen, or draw, which is what I prefer. If you hit draw, it'll show you a picture. Also takes a while because these calculators are tired. Isn't that pretty? Okay, you can see that we got our t-score right, negative 2.24, which is right there. So if you wanted to compare it to that, you could. Also see how it gives you a p-value right there? Okay, so this is the only way on a t-test to get a p-value, because the chart doesn't tell you actual proportions, not proportions, probabilities or percentages, right? The z-score chart does, but this one just tells you t numbers instead of the actual proportions. So this is the only way that you could do that if you had to prove something, but most people just use rejection regions to do t-tests. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I want you guys to turn to each other, and I want you to do you guys can decide. One of them I want you to do by hand, and one of them I want you to do by calculator. Okay? So work together in a group of 3. I'm going to do them up here so that you can check your work. And I'll just copy whatever you guys decide to do. So why don't you look them over and decide which one do you want to do by hand and which one do you want to do by calculator. I would strongly suggest that any time on a test on a test of mine or on the AP test that they give you a full list of numbers to do a hypothesis test on, immediately put it into L1 and just have your calculator do all of it for you. You're allowed to use these on the test, you're supposed to. They're expecting you to. It's not cheating. So what are we thinking?
Say we do 3 by hand.
Sure,
Okay, so this one's gonna be a calculator.
sure.
All right, I'm gonna do the work up here, and you can check with me when you're done, but talk to each other.
We can do that.
So I think we use our calculator for the first one.
Helps to write a null and alternative. Whew, your sarcasm's just dripping today. I was dripping earlier, though. I was really rough with some ninth graders. They were like, well, how am I supposed to know how to do substitution? And I was like, oh, God, if only we took notes on this. They're like, did we? And I was like, let's check. And I look in his notebook, and I was like, hey, here's a page that says how you do substitution. Maybe this is it. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, if only there was a step-by-step, hold on. And I'm like, look at that. There's a step 1, step 2, and I'm like, man, if only there was an example next to it. What? It's all right here. And he was like, just go away. And I'm like, the answers to your questions are in your notebook. And he was like, walk away, Nussbaum. And I'm like, okay, you asked.
All right.
Could you grab that? 6.